Since the dawn of human civilization, war has been an ever-present shadow. Conflict accompanies every major advancement, every shift in power, and every strong claim to ultimate truth. But is the fundamental cause merely a struggle for resources or an inherent aggressive instinct? Or is there a much subtler, more dangerous force at work? A force we collectively call ideology. Today, we address a profound and provocative question. Does ideology cause war? Unraveling the roots of global conflict from a Quranic perspective. We will analyze how systems of belief, whether political, economic, or religious, can transition from being a blueprint for civilization to a justification for bloodshed. From the Quranic viewpoint, the root of conflict isn't necessarily the doctrine itself, but the misuse of that doctrine by human desires. Let's start by defining what ideology means in a global context before we measure it against the divine standard. Simply put, an ideology is an organized set of beliefs, values, and goals that explains how society works and, more importantly, how it should work. Ideology provides identity, distinguishes us from them, and, most perilously, offers a moral justification for extreme actions. Consider the ideology of nationalism in the 20th century. This belief asserts that humanity's highest loyalty must be to the nation-state, often expressed through the slogan of blood and soil. Extreme nationalism creates conditions where other nations are not just viewed as different, but as an existential threat that must be overcome. World War I, for instance, was not a purely religious or economic war. It was an explosion of clashing nationalisms reinforced by rigid military alliances. Ideologies like fascism and Nazism took this concept to its most murderous extreme, justifying genocide and conquest in the name of racial purity and global dominance. On the economic front, we have the ideological clash that defined the Cold War: communism versus capitalism. This was a battle between two competing visions of wealth distribution and political power structure. While direct war between the U.S. and the USSR was largely avoided, this ideological struggle fueled devastating proxy wars in Korea, Vietnam, and across Latin America and Africa. Millions of lives were lost not due to personal enmity, but because two ideologies were fighting for global supremacy. The crucial question is, why are these ideologies so effective at igniting and sustaining conflict? The answer lies in their power to dehumanize the opposing group. If the opponent is a greedy capitalist, a godless communist, or an inferior race, they cease to be humans with equal rights and dignity. They become an abstraction, an ideological virus that must be eradicated for the success of our own system. This is the precise point where ideology deviates from the Quranic guidance, which fundamentally stresses diversity and mutual recognition. The Quran explicitly acknowledges and even celebrates the diversity among humankind. O mankind, indeed, we have created you from male and female, and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Ta'aruf. Surah al-Hujurat, chapter 49, verse 13. This verse establishes ta'aruf, mutual understanding and acquaintance, as the purpose of human differences, not conflict or stratification. Ideologies built on identity arrogance and ethnic separation, like extreme nationalism, are fundamentally at odds with this divine principle. We also must address ideologies of a religious nature, which are often tragically employed to justify extremism and terrorism today. However, it is essential to distinguish between religion, as a source of universal ethical guidance, and the ideologization of religion, as a narrow political weapon. When a group claims exclusive ownership of absolute truth and uses sacred texts to enforce its political agenda, it ceases to be pure religion and becomes a dangerous political ideology. The Quran adamantly rejects coercion in matters of faith. There shall be no compulsion in acceptance of the religion. The right course has become clear from the wrong. Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 256. This verse is the cornerstone of tolerance, securing the individual's right to choose their path without the threat of ideological violence. So, what does the Quran teach about the nature of conflict? It teaches that conflict, fitna, or trial is an unavoidable part of worldly life. However, it sets extremely rigid boundaries on when and how armed conflict, or qital, is permitted. The Quran states that war is only permissible as an act of self-defense against aggression and for the purpose of ending oppression. Fight in the way of God those who fight you, but do not transgress. Indeed, God does not like transgressors. Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 190. The phrase, "do not transgress," establishes the supreme rule of engagement, prohibiting attacks on non-combatants, property destruction, and unjust treatment. This is what separates a divinely sanctioned struggle from a purely ideologically driven war. Ideological wars seek to conquer, impose belief systems, and expand earthly power. The allowed conflict in Islam focuses solely on restoring justice, adl, and securing the right to worship and live in peace. The principle of adl, absolute justice, must remain the guideline, even when dealing with bitter enemies. O you who have believed, be persistently firm in justice, witnesses for God, even if it be against yourselves or parents and relatives, and let not the hatred of a people prevent you from being just. Be just, that is nearer to righteousness. Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse 8. Consider the implications of this verse for modern ideological warfare. It prohibits hatred from corrupting our judgment, even when engaged in battle. And this means if any political or religious ideology generates conflict while simultaneously justifying injustice, that ideology has failed the supreme ethical standard. Ideology, at its heart, is often a product of hawa, base desire or caprice, that is then packaged and presented as absolute truth. Ideologues see the world in rigid black and white. Their system is the light. The opponent's system is utter darkness. The Quran teaches that truth is complex, and humans are prone to error, especially when blinded by political arrogance. Conflict emerges when political ideology morphs into unchallenged religious dogma, claiming divine permission for violence. This happened during the Crusades, where religious conviction was manipulated for territorial expansion and wealth acquisition. It also happened during the communist genocides, where a materialistic, atheistic ideology was used to eliminate millions categorized as class enemies. We see that any ideology, regardless of its label, becomes dangerous when it provides an exemption from moral responsibility. When you act in the name of the nation, the race, or the proletariat, your violence is no longer a personal sin. It becomes a sacred duty or a historical necessity. This is the core abuse of ideology. We must recognize that ideology itself is not the ultimate root cause, but the accelerant of the true causes, greed and the lust for power. Ideology provides the map, the language, and the banner to organize collective greed into a mass movement. It acts like gasoline on a fire. The gasoline, ideology, makes the fire, human ambition, infinitely larger and more destructive. The Quranic antidote to ideological conflict is the affirmation of Tawhid, the oneness of God, which must logically lead to the Wahdatul Ummah, the unity of humanity. If all humans submit to one Creator, then all ideological dividers, race, nation, class, become secondary and non-absolute. This principle radically removes the basis for any ideological supremacy that would justify war. No man-made political ideology has the right to demand the absolute allegiance that belongs only to the divine. By placing God's sovereignty as supreme, we prevent human ideologies from becoming idols that demand blood sacrifice. So, how can we practically counter conflicting ideologies and build bridges of peace, or salam? The first path is through knowledge and wisdom, hikmah. The Quran constantly invites humans to use their intellect, aku, and contemplate the signs of God's majesty in the universe. Critical thinking is the first defense against ideological extremism. Ideological dogma demands blind obedience, while revelation demands deep contemplation. Visual, diverse group of people reading, ancient and modern libraries, scientists. Second, we must prioritize reconciliation, islah, over retaliation. The principle of islah, or making peace and correcting wrongs, must be the ultimate goal of every conflict. Even after a just war, the Quran teaches that the door to peace must always remain open to the enemy. And if they incline to peace, then incline to it also, and rely upon God. Surah Al-Anfal, chapter 8, verse 61. This is both a sound political strategy and an ethical imperative. Never let the ideology of revenge obstruct the opportunity for lasting peace. Third, we must be vigilant against political deceit. Many current global conflicts are not caused by honest ideological belief, but by pretense. Leaders claim to act in the name of democracy or liberation, when the true motives are oil, hegemony, or financial profit. The Quran sharply criticizes those whose words are appealing but whose hearts are filled with enmity. And of the people is he whose speech pleases you in worldly life, and he calls God to witness to what is in his heart, yet he is the fiercest of opponents. Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 204. This verse teaches us to look beyond ideological rhetoric and judge leaders by their actions and fundamental integrity. The key takeaway is this: an ideology must be judged not by its promises, but by its results on the ground. That is, whether it generates justice or creates oppression. Any ideology that systematically brings about zulm, oppression, is an ideology that must be rejected, regardless of its label, be it religious, political, or economic. This standard is universal and timeless. We can conclude, therefore, that ideology does not cause war independently. Ideology is the nervous system that allows the passion for power and arrogance to organize itself into a large-scale conflict. Without ideology, conflicts might be limited to tribal feuds or local skirmishes. But ideology transforms local disputes into global wars by providing absolute justification and mass mobilization. The eternal solution lies in the transformation of the human heart, as demanded by the Quran. When the heart is guided by taqwa, God consciousness, any ideology adopted will be subordinate to justice, compassion, and the recognition of mutual human dignity. We all have a responsibility to scrutinize the ideologies we adhere to, ensuring they are tools to serve goodness, not weapons for destruction. This brings our deep analysis to a close. We hope this discussion has provided you with a clear, ethically guided framework for evaluating the politics and policies that shape your world. Our mission at QURANxINSIGHT is always to fuse the pursuit of political and social knowledge with profound spiritual insight. If this video resonated with you, providing a deeper faith-based framework for understanding global conflict and ideology, please consider supporting our channel and helping this essential message of balanced inquiry reach a global audience. Take a moment right now to like this video. Your positive feedback helps us confirm the resonance and value of this content. Share this script and its insights with political scientists, history students, and anyone dedicated to peace in their nation. And most importantly, please subscribe to the QURANxINSIGHT channel and ring that notification bell. Your subscription is your commitment to continue exploring the deep wisdom found at the intersection of revelation and contemporary challenge.